In this video, we're going to cover some important muting techniques on guitar. This is something that really separates good players from great players. So we're going to talk about 3 different things. First, muting with our picking hand, then our fretting hand, and lastly, we're also going to look at muting specifically when playing chords. My name is Simen, and I'm a guitarist, music producer, and graphic designer from Norway. I'm here to share everything I learned so far in my journey and document what I learned in real time. So let me put down the iced coffee so I can actually play. Okay, so let's start with muting with our picking hand. Let's say we are playing 10th fret of the D string. So you can use your picking hand to mute all the strings above the note you're playing. So in this case, that's going to be the E string and the A string. And the way I do it is to put my palm on top of the strings lightly. So you can hear it's not completely muted, but this is fine because in this case I'm just playing this note anyway. But if I want to do some more funky stuff, then that's not going to work, so we get back to that later. But if you want some more muting with your picking hand, you can move it closer towards the neck. I don't do this a lot personally, because I think it's a bit harder to play that way. But that's an option you can use if you want to. Okay, so to conclude the picking hand, you can use that to mute all the strings above the note you're playing. And you do that by putting the palm lightly on top of the strings. And if you're playing something higher up on the neck, then you also move your palm, so you can lightly mute all the strings above that string. And while the picking hand mutes all the strings above the note you're playing, you can use your fretting hand to mute all the strings below the note you're playing. So let's still use the 10th fret of the D string. Then I can use my first finger, put it lightly on top of the strings below that note. And now the strings are muted. So that's the 2 most important muting techniques to know about. Because now you can mute over the note you're playing and under. So if you only want to remember 2 things from this video, you want to remember those 2 things. But I'm going to show you some other ways to mute as well. For example, still on the 10th fret of the D string. It's also possible to use the finger I'm fretting with and mute the string below. And a third way to mute with a fretting hand is to use your first finger and put it on top of all strings. This is good if you want to do something funky, for example. Or if you want to do a pick break, like this. Okay, so conclude everything we talked about with a fretting hand. 1. You can mute all the strings below the note you're playing. You can also use the finger you're using to fret the note to mute the string below. And you can also use one finger to mute all strings. By the way, this video is a part of my course called Technique Fundamentals, which you can get on playwithaplan.com. Here I'm going through everything you need to know to make sure your technique is on point. You'll also get access to all my other courses to get more clarity and consistent progress on guitar. So you can check that out on playwithaplan.com. The link is going to be in the description. So let's also have a look at chords and some specific muting techniques with chords. The first thing to know is that all the same muting techniques applies to chords. So let's take a normal C power chord, for example, from the 8th fret. So that's going to be 8, 10, 10. Then you can still use your first finger to mute all the strings below those notes. Okay, and let's say we're playing the same power chord, but now from the A string. Now we also need to mute the low E string. And you could use your palm from your picking hand, but it's just going to mute it lightly. So if you're going to actually play the string like this, or doing some more funky stuff, then we want some more muting. Then what you can do is to mute the low E string by using the fingertip of your first finger. And there's one last thing I want to show you. And that is that you can use your thumb to mute strings as well. So let's use a C major chord as an example. We're going to play 8, skip the A string, then 10, 9, 8. So in this case, I use the thumb to mute the A string. I can also use the tip of my ring finger to mute it even more. And on this specific chord, I'm even muting the high E string with my first finger. So a lot of muting going on here. So this is a very good chord to practice. Whew. It's getting quite warm in here, because that's quite a lot of muting techniques. Personally, I never actually practiced muting techniques, that just kind of happened. So if I get some strings ringing I don't want, then I try to figure out what muting technique to use to get rid of that noise. So that's one good approach, but you can of course do some exercises as well. To conclude, now we have looked at muting with our picking hand, fretting hand, and also when playing chords. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out the video on the screen next, where I share some of my best strategies to get better at guitar. Bye!